Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Romesh Hettiarachchi, and I'm a lawyer with over a decade of legal experience based in Toronto, Canada. And this channel, this Lawyer channel, is really about sharing some of the experience I've had along this journey trying to build out a legal practice that's not only modern but also aligned with my wellness and my priorities. And so in this video, I'm going to be sharing something that I really wish I knew a lot earlier on in my career, and that's the importance of system workflows and processes. When you're in law school, you assume that all you need to know is understanding the law and knowing how to draft a contract and whatnot. But the practice of law, as many of you know, is very, very different. It's really all about understanding how to get one thing done after another thing done after another thing done. And the longer you practice, the more important systems, processes, and workflows come in. Because without the systems, without the processes, without the workflows, things get really, really chaotic. And as I had mentioned in a previous video, if you have chaos, adding more support doesn't really decrease the chaos, it only adds to it. And so that is really something that I wish I had known a lot earlier in my career, and that's something I'm going to be diving a little bit deeper now. So one of the biggest challenges that we as lawyers have, and frankly everybody in the digital age have, is that there never seems to be enough time in the day. And so you could be up in the morning at 9 o'clock and it already feels that you're 3 hours behind. I know with me at least, I have like way too many emails to answer. I've got clients that are waiting for updates, and that's even before I look at my calendar. Now, if that's you, and I'm not assuming it's you, but if that's you, what you've got to realize is that this is a problem that most, if not all, professionals will have to face at one point or another. The question is, what do you do at that point? And something that I've been really intentional about doing over the last 4 or 5 months is really systemizing my processes and workflows, just so that I can tell someone or train someone, saying like, look, if once this happens, you do the next thing, and then do the next thing. Systems, processes, and trainings are really fundamental to you keeping your sanity as you build out your practice. And conversely, if you don't have those processes, it gets really, really hard to do anything well. Case in point, late last year, I had a couple of files that completely screwed my routine over. It's like an emergency motions or emergency injunctions. Those types of things, it means you have to push certain work and certain priorities to the side just to focus on one thing. And even after that one thing is complete, it doesn't really mean, or it takes a lot of time, at least for me, to get back into those processes and workflows. And even a month after that file ended, I'm still trying to get back into my process and workflows. So that's really what this video is about. Now, if you've never heard about processes and workflows, all the process, all the workflow is, it's really how you get from a starting point to a goal or to an outcome. Okay? And when you start off your practice, or when you first start, let's say you're a new lawyer, you start a new firm, even if you're an experienced lawyer and start a new firm, there's going to be a little bit of a transition period where you're going to be focused on figuring out how you're going to get things done. Without those, and without that plan, you're essentially remaking the wheel every single time a client comes in, which is not really an efficient way to practice. So over time, after you start your firm, you're going to know, okay, you know what? Once I do X, Y, and Z, I will be doing A, B, and C, right? If you don't have processes, what's going to happen is that you're always going to constantly struggle to think about what is happening next. And that struggle could often mean that there's going to be errors that creep in. So having a standardized operating system, a standard operating process, it's a way of reducing errors. And that's something I'm still working on as well, full disclosure. A really good thing to be using, a really good practice to be using this point is checklists. And there's an author, Atul Gawande, who I believe wrote the Checklist Manifesto. I think I've got it back on my shelf back there. Atul Gawande talks about, even as a surgeon, you having checklists results in a drastic reduction in, I think, illness or infection. And so, if there's one thing I would ask you to consider right now is think about some ways in your practice where a checklist could be of some use in some shape, in some form. Now, I'd ask the question, like, if you're not familiar with the routine, with processes, very likely you already have a process, but you don't really acknowledge it, and that's your morning routine. And your morning routine will look something like you open up your eyes. That is the trigger for the process. And then you're going to be brushing your teeth, taking a shower, grabbing a coffee. So it's everything that happens after, that you do, quote unquote, automatically after you open up your eyes. So for me, I look at processes as composing of three parts: a trigger, an outcome, and everything that happens in between. And if you think about it in that way, a trigger, outcome, and everything in between, it's a little bit easier for you to break it down step by step by step. So for instance, my morning routine could start with me opening up my eyes, and it could end with me sitting down at the computer to work at home. And so that could look like I open up my eyes, I go brush my teeth, I grab a coffee, I read the news, I get some breakfast, I make sure the kids are ready to go to school, and then I sit down on my computer. That's what a process would look like. Once you have a process figured out, what you'll find is that these processes, once you can get it to like an automatic sort of thing, it's going to reduce decision fatigue. And reducing decision fatigue is a really important component when it comes to reducing stress. Because I think a lot of the stress, at least for me, is really tied to all the other stuff that's on my mind. And so the importance of process is that it's on routine. I'm just doing it, right? So what I would encourage you to consider is building out routines and building out workflows, not only in your personal life, but also in your practice. So for some of you, another routine that I'm trying to build out that I'm not as successful at is working out in the mornings, or working out more often. I used to be pretty good at that, and not as much anymore. But one thing that I try to do as a routine, let's say on a weekly basis, is I have a chat with my broader team, right? So that's my Monday meetings. And those Monday meetings are a really good starting point for me to build culture, especially when you have staff work remotely. Another good routine is ensuring that you only take client calls within certain times of the day. That might be another routine you may want to do. Now, if you want a starting point when it comes to routines, I would really recommend the book Atomic Habits, and a lot of you have probably heard it before. It's by an author named James Clear. New York Times bestseller, all the wonderful good stuff, and incredible book. Highly recommend you get it. And his idea of building habits is something that I've been trying to use as a jumping off point when it comes to processes in my own practice. And so he talks about 4 laws of behavior change. And so the first being, you have to make the behavior change obvious. So take a moment and identify some of the key workflows in your practice, okay? And once you identify those key workflows, then have a checklist that goes along with it. And a good starting point actually is a lot of law societies or professional associations, they'll actually have the checklist ready. So like, what does an intake form look like? If you're doing an intake piece. And so once you have the clarity in terms of the different processes, you then want to tie those processes down to bigger goals, right? And that way you're basically incentivizing change, right? So for instance, let's say if it's an intake process, you might want to have an intake process where there's some technology in it, right? Or it might be that you say that, look, if the more successful intakes I have, the more likely I'm able to increase my revenue. That could make it attractive as well. And that motivation is really key in terms of getting your really, really efficient process down. James Clear also talks about simplifying workflows and making it easy. And one way that I've been able to do that in my own practice is keeping it simple, stupid, the KISS approach, right? So you don't try to overcomplicate things. So having email templates that go out, having a sort of like an email autoresponder, that's one way. Having really, really well-trained staff that takes the workload off my plate, that's another way. The easier you make it for your workflow to be completed, the more likely the workflow is going to be completed and you're going to have a positive result at the end of the day. And then lastly, you've got to celebrate wins and make it satisfying, right? Again, not something I'm very, very good at, but I'm trying to work on it, you know. And so for me right now, it's really all about, if I get a certain amount of intakes a month, hit a goal, that's the way I'm celebrating, right? And it could be I'm just taking my wife out for dinner, or just going out and having a decent time with some friends. Whatever thing you do right now after watching this video, I would challenge you to identify what are the key processes you'd like to address in one part of your practice. So it could be like an intake, or it could be billing. And try and use these principles that James Clear teaches in your practice, okay? And hopefully by making systems a part of your daily routine, you're going to build a foundation to have long-term success without being overwhelmed. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to be the hero here. Obviously, I'm still learning and I'm still building away. So I'd love to hear what your feedback is when it comes to building systems and building workflows. So if you have those comments, leave it down below. Otherwise, when we talk about systems and workflows, it's actually part of a model I call the Thriving Solo Lawyer model. And if that's of interest to you, you can click the video up here, and you could learn more about what I think the foundation is to building a successful practice. In any case, I hope this video is of value. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.